And we are back with part 2 of this amazing birth story with Nikki Reed and Abby Vidikan. And we're going to jump right in. And also, did you say like you're doing a home birth just at a different home location, right?
Yes, I'm doing a home birth, but I was doing it at a family member's house so that I could be close to the hospital because everyone here knows I live in the middle of nowhere, and typically you'll find me like in a stack of hay somewhere. So I should probably get a little closer to civilization.
Oh my gosh.
So I said to Abby, how soon should I get in the car? She's like, well, probably now would be good. And I was like, oh, okay, you sure? All right. So I make sure everything's settled. I think by the time you call me, Ian is still like in a state of panic. I know. He's in the background. He was so panicky, which I think is also why I said to Abby beforehand, no matter what happens, like, I really need you to be, I just need you to be really consistent because I don't know what happens in like a man's mind when they're watching their partner go through this type of experience. And so I knew that I need like one pillar. Yeah.
Thank you to our sponsor, Needed, for powering this week's episode. Use code MOTHERDAYS, DAZE, for 20% off your first month with Needed's premium perinatal supplements.
Okay, so I get in the car and I called her when I'm on the road, and I remember the road I was on, and I remember that it was like 20 to 1, and I said, so I'm still not having contractions. I just don't want to waste anyone's time. Are you sure I should be driving into the city and you want to stay awake? She's like, your contractions are probably going to start in about 5 to 10 minutes. And then lo and behold, I looked at the clock and I laughed because it was 12:50, which was exactly 10 minutes later. And I was like, oh, wow, that was a big cramp. And then Ian's like, that was your first contraction. And so I just had the opposite experience this time where I was like already entering into what I knew was going to be like the birth moment, but without even in full-on labor. So it was so the opposite of what I experienced with my daughter. So I'm driving in and it's pretty calm. And I was like, should I put on my birth playlist? And then I was like, no, I think I'm going to put a little lotion on my face because I'm feeling really dry. I made sure I put extra chapstick on because I remember thinking like with my daughter, my lips were just so chapped. So I was like, let me do all these things now so that I can really get in this moment. So it was really easy peasy. I said, let's save my birth playlist for when we get there, but we don't want to overplay it. I just kept thinking like, this isn't happening. And I get there and I pull up and Abby's already there. And I was like, don't call my doctor or Christina yet because I just want to wait until I know I'm in labor. She's like laughing at me. She picks up the phone. She calls the doctor. She was like, do I have permission to call? I was like, yes, only if you think I'm really in labor. She's like, I think you're really going to be in labor. This was after she's now pulled in. Ian is unloading the car. And I live like 9 minutes from where the birth is happening. And so I, got there a little bit before then, but at this point, I know she's having contractions. She's having them quite frequently in the car. And then she has her first contraction in front of me. And I was like, Nikki, I have to call him because he has all these feelings about missing the first birth and he will never forgive either one of us. Oh, yes, he missed my first birth. This is the Doctor Who.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was
my
sick.
God. Yeah.
So he has missed the first birth and I'm watching her contract. And again, like, all these factors, right? It's like you just anticipate things really fast. And he would never forgive either one of us if he didn't make it this time. And bless him, he's a little bit on the older side, so I want to make sure that he's driving safely. Yeah, and he's not rushing. So I just said, listen, it's happening, and like it's probably going to be a little bit like we have some time, but you should probably head over here. I don't think he would have been okay. He wouldn't have been okay. And the point of me saying that was just that Abby knew my body better than me at that point, just because of my other experience. I was like, there's no way I'm in active labor if I'm not in the kind of intensity that I thought I would be in active labor. But I was fully in active labor. So we unload the car and it was just honestly the most like sort of, can someone think of another word for me besides like seamless, simple, or easy? Because it wasn't any of those things, but it was all of those things at the same time. Like it was all of the things that I had feared did not become a reality. And even like the intensity that I really feared never became fully realized, which was really kind of shocking to me. And so I just kept thinking like I'm not in labor. And so all the things that you sort of see or read about or Abby like telling me that story about her client who was laughing in between contractions, we walk into the house. I'm like setting up a couple of things and making sure, I wanted to make sure that there was like water. I walk into the kitchen with her and I just remember my hands were a little shaky. We were standing in the kitchen and I said, I'm not sure if my hands are shaky because I have adrenaline or if I feel a little bit afraid because I know this is happening right now. And she was like, it's okay. And that was my first hug. She gave me a hug. So that was like hug number one. And then we walked into the living room. And we did it all together. It was just so sweet. Like we blew up, like the birth tub was blown up in that moment. And we're like talking and telling stories. And I'm having contractions where I'm kind of like leaning into a wall a little bit, but there's so many pictures of me smiling and then having a contraction and then smiling. And we're telling stories. I think I told like a bad story about some TV show I was watching or something. And then we all started laughing. And then I'm having another contraction. The room goes quiet. I'm like, this is weird. Everything's just in here. All this is happening.
So at this point, to me, it's your doctor. It's Johanna, who is Johanna and I met 5 years ago, actually working at a birth center. And we've been attending births together ever since. And she is, in so many ways, the reason I am able to be the midwife I am, because she is just, I can't say enough good things about this person. She deserves her own shout out 1,000%. She is, we call her the Vagina Whisperer. It's her nickname. Because she has a way of just preserving the integrity of vaginas on a regular basis, but she's just so much more than that. She's really just the most beautiful force in the birth space. And it's truly just a calling and a life path for her in so many ways. But so she was there. Oh yeah, and she is the most magical.
She's come to visit me too.
So she has the most magical hands too. I always say that I'm envious for anybody who gets to experience a Johanna's hip squeeze while they're actually contracting, because I've heard that it's glorious. Yeah. But she's now joined the space, and you guys have you met?
We had never met, and she walks into the house, and I gave her a hug, and I was like, "Wow, your hair smells so good." I just remember she's beautiful, long hair, and she goes, "Yeah, I just showered."
Oh my gosh.
That's
wow.
so cute.
I think I'm feeling pretty good. Like that was just my response. I was like, I think I'm feeling pretty good. I don't know, is this happening? I almost had one moment where I felt a little embarrassed because I was like, oh, I better have this baby. Otherwise everyone's come over and there's a lot of pressure to make sure there's a baby that comes. But there wasn't any pressure. It was just me being silly.
Yeah. And I think all of us, like Christina King was also there taking photos at this point. And I think all of us, like those of us especially who do birth work, I know I like, and I know Johanna likes kind of settling into a space again, as opposed to like, and it will happen at times. We will get called kind of late. We will have to run in and basically catch a baby within 10 minutes of entering that space. But there is a beauty to watching the process unfold, and then also just, settling in, making sure we're not shifting the energy too much as, too close to birth.
I'm showing a picture of you and Johanna since I know this is being recorded too at the same time. So that would be just so you can have like an actual visual of what these two women bring to a space. So this is a photo that really kind of says it all, which is these two women right there, sort of holding me on both sides.
Oh my gosh. So if you listen to our show, you know that Sarah and I are baby obsessed. We keep trying to convince the old hubbaroons to have more babies with us, which hopefully they will. But I wanted to share this crazy story because, look, I've been wanting to have kids since I was a teenager, really. But when I was really seriously thinking about it, I went to my doctor. I was probably 26, 27. And he was like, okay, so how long have you been having prenatals? And I don't know if this was anyone else's experience, but I was like, wait, what? Don't you just take that when you get pregnant? And he was like, no, the recommendation is that you're supposed to take prenatal supplements 3 to 4 months before even wanting to conceive. So that really threw me for a loop. And I think, there's that added pressure of just knowing that
pregnancy and postpartum are some of the most nutritionally demanding times in a woman's life. And of course, we know that our baby's health now and for years to come, it's really truly influenced by our nutrient status. So then I was like, okay, where do I go? Like, what do I do?
And there's so many prenatals out there. But if you're anything like me, I get so nauseous when taking a pill. In my first couple of pregnancies, I would get so sick. And so in my last pregnancy, my friend was like, oh, I use this brand called Needed. And they have a prenatal multi. It's for before, during, and after. And it's a vanilla powder. So you can put it on food, you can drink it, you can use it before, during, and after pregnancy. And it's all the nutrients that you need, which is just so fantastic.
And no nausea. I can tell you guys, no nausea. Yeah, it was amazing. I had it with Prairie and it was such a game changer. I remember feeling so afraid in the mornings. Like I'd eat my breakfast and I'd have this huge pill and I was like, oh, here it comes.
It's going to get
sick
stuck
for the next few hours.
Get stuck in my throat.
Yeah, I know.
And Needed was actually designed by women's health experts that test nutrient levels based on the latest research and in-practice insights from thousands of women. And it's the #1 nutrition brand recommended and used by more than 4,000 women health experts, midwives, doctors, functional medicine doctors, OBGYNs. When I found that out, I was completely blown away. But this is something that so many of my friends have been talking about lately.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And we love that Needed also offers a premium supplement for every single stage of motherhood. So from egg quality support for women trying to conceive, shout out to Sarah, woo woo, to a lactation support plan for breastfeeding mums like me who hasn't stopped breastfeeding since 2014.
There's just so much on the journey to motherhood that we can't control, but nutrition is a big one that we actually can control.
Yeah, guys. And now you can join us on the Needed journey. Head over to thisisneeded.com and use code MOTHERDAYS, that's Mother Days with a Z, for 20% off your first month of Needed products.
But Johanna does have magic hands. And I definitely felt like a good part of why this experience was what it was because of those hands, for sure.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
So things are kind of like progressing and I'm starting to feel like I'm leading a little bit more when I'm having a contraction, which if you had asked me in that moment, I would have said this is like maybe a level 3 or 4. Like I was still fully having, great conversations with everyone. My doctor was there. We were chatting. Part of why my heart was, so the backstory on my doctor is just that he knew my grandfather. He's a very special person to me. And in that time, he was sort of like walking around and seeing photos of my grandfather there. And I just felt like he, for some reason, was able to like pull my grandfather into that space. And I don't know why, but that's like what I was envisioning was happening in that time. And he was able to share stories about that. And we were laughing and talking about that. So anyway, at one point, he goes, so should we check you? And I remember Abby saying, so if you get checked while you're in active labor, it really speeds things up. Like you really feel the intensity, right?
Well, it can. Whenever you irritate the cervix, like during labor, almost like the equivalent of that breastfeed. So it will change how you experience your next week of contractions for sure.
And let me tell you, she was so right. Johanna was filling up that tub and I said to Johanna, I don't think you should fill up the tub yet because I still don't think I'm in labor, right? This is like the theme of the night.
I love it.
This
and
is
she
amazing.
looks over at me so sweetly and smiles, which is obviously the cue of like, okay, yeah, we're going to fill it anyway and then we'll see, right? And so, and then my doctor says, I really feel like should we check you? And I'm like, yeah, nope, that sounds great. Let's do it. So labor dress comes off. I get on the couch and I'm still thinking, oh, this is so funny. And then I'm like taking my dress off when I'm not even really in labor. So I get on the couch and he checks me. And this is like the turning point of the night. Literally, I heard Abby's words in my head going, things can intensify if you get checked. And I lay down, he checks me and I go to stand up and I literally fall to my knees and grab around her whole body like this, like a bear. And I was like, oh my gosh, things got real. I think that was the first moment where I was kind of like, I think I need to yell during this contraction here. I think
and I think you were, 7 centimeters?
Yeah, and he goes, so we're at 7 centimeters. And that was the craziest thing I ever heard, because I still didn't think I was in labor. I still didn't think the contractions were even enough.
But I think if you had turned to Johanna and I, like right before she got checked, if you had said to us, like, hey, what would you estimate for that cervical exam? I think both of us would have said 6 to 7 centimeters, like hands down. You know, so she hasn't processed it yet. But
I haven't processed it.
This is going to turn real quick soon.
Because what I went through with my daughter was 0 to 100. So it was 0, 0, 0, and then 100. And at 100, I was in the car heading to the hospital, and I was at 100 the whole drive, and 100 when I got there, and everything was 100. And I didn't have a single break between contractions. It was like they rolled one into the next. And so I was literally hanging on for dear life. And so with my son, I'm like, this is, I don't want to use the word easy because I feel like that can totally be misinterpreted, but I just kept thinking this isn't real enough yet, right? There you go. That's what I was saying.
Intense enough. Yeah.
It wasn't. And so when he said 7 centimeters, I was like, that's interesting. And I dropped to my knees and I like wrapped around her, and then I'm starting to yell, and then I burst into tears. And then she goes, she's so sweet and like gentle in those moments. She puts her hand on my hand and she goes, it's okay. And she like rubs the back. And I was like, oh man, that's really what I need right now. And I didn't even know I needed that, because I thought I needed like really masculine energy. And what I needed was this sort of motherly energy. So then Johanna goes, sweetheart, do you want to get in the pool? And I was like, right now?
Yeah.
She's like, now's a good time. And I said to Abby, but do you think it will be like, am I going to be in here for hours? Because maybe I should wait then. And then Johanna goes, I don't think it'll be hours. And then my doctor goes, I estimate like 1 hour. And I was like, you think my baby will be here in 1 hour? And then like, boom, another contraction. And I walked into the pool. I was like, okay, I'm getting in the pool.
Oh my God.
I don't think I've ever seen someone that like hop into a pool quite like fast.
Like bunny hopped right into the pool and plopped right down. And from that moment on, that was like it was a very tense hour. I mean, that was, 1 hour of, I really made friends with the side of that pool. I mean, I don't think I've squeezed anything that tight in my whole life.
Yes.
And I have so many incredible images that and I say incredible because, well, they are, because she's a very talented photographer, but incredible, like they bring me back to the moment.
Yes.
Which is, again, if I never get to experience this my whole life again, I'm so happy that I have these frozen in time. So, the rest of this story goes, I guess, sort of like I think most births do, although I've only attended 2 and they're both mine. But I do remember at one point about 30 minutes later, where Johanna was like, okay, so I see some bulging. And I was like, bulging? Like, I just remember thinking again, like, that means the baby's close? Is that even possible? And
oh my gosh.
So she goes, you feel like you want to start, like pushing down into this. And that was really the turning point to me. And I said to Abby right before the birth, I said, one thing I know I really need is for you to tell me how long. When I'm pushing, I want to know how long you think. Like, I don't want you to tell me soon. I don't want the word soon. That word gives me a lot of anxiety. I just want you to tell me, like, I think this is going to be X amount of time. Like, you've got 30 minutes of this is what I think. Obviously, she can't predict it, but like, that's what I think, right? Because again, with my daughter, I just had this experience of like, I was holding on for dear life. And so soon could have been an hour. It could have been 7 hours and I didn't know. So I wanted to know, like, are we getting somewhere, And so I'm really like, I'm pushing with everything I've got. And Abby goes, I can't tell you how long, but I can tell you that I think it's probably, what'd you say, 3 more contractions?
Wow.
I was like, wow, okay, I can do anything for 3 contractions. Like, that's me. I mean, I think, what did I push for? 6 contractions, maybe 5 or 6 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what I needed to know, was like, I can do anything for this amount of time or this amount of contractions. And she gave me that gift.
Sign me up.
Yes, totally. Same. I'm like,
I want that
that's
knowing.
amazing.
I want that knowing. That's like
Totally.
amazing.
What a gift.
I mean, again, like knowing how close he had been for so long, and then we're seeing bulging from the outside that is indicative of his head really being very close. Like, you're going to push 3 times probably each contraction, and I think that's about as long as it's taken to be here. And I mean, you're putting your hands on someone's belly at each appointment. So like every time I would see her, I would feel this kid. I knew that he wasn't too big, and he was in such a great position. So it's like, yeah, it's probably going to be pretty efficient after this point. So 3 contractions. They put a beautiful mirror down there in this pool. So if I wanted to, I could see everything.
Oh, that's so cool.
that.
In the pool?
Yeah,
I love that.
I've had that, and it's the
Abby
best.
has this beautiful birth kit that you can order, so it's all in one place, which is so nice because, gosh, it's so overwhelming to try to like piece it together. So in that birth kit, there's like an underwater flashlight for that mirror if you should want it. And the one thing I knew I definitely needed was a dark room and a dark space. So everything was very dark in there with only candles, and so the flashlight I think can be handy. But everything was in one place. And I just like clicked a button and it arrived at the house, which is genius. And she even brought the pool. So, I mean, I think that's what happens, right? Yeah. No one buy. Do people buy pools? Only if they want to.
They
Then
rent it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here comes the baby, and I'm pushing with everything I've got. And then in my head pops Sarah's face.
This is the moment, everyone.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And Johanna is such a godsend, I'll tell you, because she's in front of me the whole time. And, I can't see Abby at this point because Abby's in front of me for the majority of what's going on until it's really go time. And then because I'm having this baby on my hands and knees. Sorry, I forgot to say that part.
That's my favorite in water position to birth, hands and knees in water.
That's how I had my daughter too. I don't know that there's another position that works for me, honestly. I feel like I need to use my entire body to like push down with everything I've got. And I just don't think I can do that on my back. For that, I don't know. That's not how my body, I didn't feel comfortable, I guess. I don't know.
Everyone has their thing. Mine is a split squat.
Yes.
Right, mine was like semi-reclined for my second and then hands and knees for my third.
Wow.
My first, I was side lying. Oh, so you've done them all.
What?
Well, they all came in their own unique position. And so it was whatever essentially felt good based on their positioning. So my son was standing side up with all back labor. And I didn't like a lot of pressure on my back. And then my daughter had her front hand up. So all the pain was in my pubic bone. So getting on hands and knees was like, it felt like my pubic bone was going to come apart. And my third, he had the back hand up. So the pressure was all in my tailbone. And so my husband, with his big, like forceful man hands, was applying so much counter pressure to my hips that hands and knees was the only thing that I couldn't push without the counter pressure. And I asked her so many questions leading up to this. She's like, how will I know if there's a hand up? Will you be able to know that? What are the things you can? Well, I know. But creating a safe space was so important too. Like I was able to so when all my friends were calling me and telling me all the scary stories beforehand, instead of like letting that influence what I was going to do, I would just call her and go, so what would you do if this happened? Just curious. So if there were a retained placenta, what would you do? Or, another story that I had was, if there's a cord prolapse, what would you do? And then my big question for Abby was, what would you do if you had to resuscitate a baby? And this actually almost came into play for me here. I mean, it didn't, but it was like there was a moment where I thought it could. And so it was really nice knowing that I didn't have to sort of question that. Her answer was so great to me. She was like, I actually feel very comfortable with resuscitation. And I wanted to know because I don't feel comfortable, like some parents, I don't know if you and Mark or you and Eric are different about this, but like if you have a baby who's gagging or choking, there's usually one parent who can step in and sort of handle that in a better way than the other one. It's not me. I'm not the parent that handles that well. I mean, I am. Right. And she's like, I feel great about resuscitation. Well, I think it's also, so as midwives, we have to have protocols in place, right? We have to be ready to kind of act, or at least know what our actions are going to be based on different circumstances. And one of the things with resuscitations is that it can be really jarring for a parent to see us working on a baby. And you have to be able to talk to people calmly, because if your energy is going up, then the energy in the room is going up. And if the parent's energy is right, then they're not helping me in the way that I need them to be. And generally, when it comes to resuscitation, the thing I'm going to say to those parents is, you need to call your baby in now. Like, you need to say to, hey, come into your body. Like, we're here, we're on the other side of this. You're okay. You come into your body now. And at the same time, I'm recounting the steps in my head that I have to go through to help this baby breathe. And so NRP for me, or, resuscitating a baby, it's just one of those things where I just walk into it with the most calm headspace so that I can recall what I need to do. And my parents can do what they need to do. But I've done NRP and had like parents taking pictures, not realizing what is actually happening, because Johanna and I, like, we are just a well-oiled machine at this point. We bounce off each other in just the most beautiful way. That's why I love her so much. But we've just been so chill about it that kind of goes a little bit like it's missed almost that it's happening. I go back and I watch the way that they dance together, her and Johanna, it's so special. Like, you can hear Abby calls out the head exactly when the head comes out. Johanna notes it because I'm not sure, but the baby has to, probably because the baby can't stay in the water for a certain amount of time, right? So we are watching the time from the birth of the head to the birth of the body, right? And then after the baby comes out of the water, they're talking to each other. And I'm never like distracted. I didn't know any of this was happening until I watched this video back, but they're clocking everything. And it's funny because I want to hear what you think of this experience. Basically, so I'm pushing and the baby comes out. And in that moment, I actually almost stood up out of the pool, and it would have been really the wrong thing to do. Although Abby did it fine, but I don't know what was going through my head, but it's very common. I just had a birth like this last month where she birthed the head and then stood up. And once you're out of the water, you're out of the water.
You can't go back in. No way.
So we will gently like apply a little bit of pressure to the lower back to try and keep someone submerged. But you want to like run away from it. You're like, oh my God, that was so intense. Just get me away from this sensation. And the urge is to pull out of the water. And for me, it was my daughter, her head and body came in the course of less than 2 seconds. It was like the head came out and the body fell out. And with my second birth, this birth, his head, everything was very slow. And I actually think that was a testament to Johanna's coaching, because she kept coaching my sort of breathing and pushing. And she was like, I don't want you to push. I want you to just blow like you're blowing out 1,000 candles. And so I kept, like, don't push, no intensity, but just blow. And so the blowing, his head came out so slow. And that's her, I think, an effort to like not have you tear. So what she's doing, and again, this is where like that vagina whisperer comes into play. She's actually watching the tissue. She's looking at the perfusion of the tissue. So again, it's individual for each person. Like, who's the tissue going to give? Is it going to stay intact? But she's watching as like the color of the tissue essentially. And when it gets to max stretch, she says, okay, now blow. So essentially ease past that point. And when it perfuses differently again, she's like, okay, now give a little bit of a push. And so, I would suture maybe 10% of my clients because of her. It is entirely because of her. And I will say to her, like, okay, come over here so you can watch this crowning so you can keep this intact. Guys, she's a gift to all birthing women.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was just doing a birth course for my friend who's about to give birth. And I'm like, oh, maybe I've like done the wrong thing here, because I'm like, and then you need to go and to let the head come out so slowly so that the stretching is more of a prolonged period, so that, because when I had my first, I was pushing with all my might. And so, Nikki, when you were saying that, I was like, oh, maybe I need to go back to my friend and be like, push with all your might. And then when you feel that it's getting really tight, then slow it back down. Because with my first one, no one told me to slow down. And I was pushing so hard and it just like blew up my vagina. Like I was pushing into the stretch and it was just, boom, it just pinged and I split open. And so now I'm so like the breathing, the slowing that part down. So I was really interested to hear that. And the fact that it changes color is unbelievable.
I know. That is so, Wow, that's such a mind-blowing
the
thing.
coaching aspect of it too is so important because the instinct, I think, is to just push past it. Either to pull away completely or just push past it, like get it done with. And so when she's telling you to slow down, she's refocusing your efforts and like really just like walking you through it. And to know Johanna is to know just like this gentle energy that she had. I mean, for truth, that Johanna shows up as the person you need her to be also. She can be gentle and she can be firm. But generally in those moments, she's very calming, to sort of walking you through how to, you know, just ease that head into the world in a way that's going to, you know, maintain tissue integrity. She said to me at one point, you know, it's interesting because you can't talk about this beforehand. It's like got to be during the birth because every birth is so unique. And so she can't really like give you these pointers beforehand. It's got to be in the moment. And in the moment, as this baby is coming out, she says, so Nikki, the first push gets him to where we need him to be, but the second push brings him down. So can you push twice in a row on this one? And I was like, okay. And so I'm pushing once. And then she goes, now I need you to take a big breath. And now I need you to push a second time. And so she's literally coaching every single push so that I don't tear it. And
unbelievable.
She really like drew this baby down exactly where it needed to be. And then she started telling me to blow. So I was doing this like intense blowing of the candles and the baby's coming out so slowly. And I hear Johanna say to Abby, is our head? And Abby's like, not yet, because that's how slow he was coming down. And in this video, you can see just like the first forehead wrinkle, the second, I'm blowing a little bit of eyebrow, and it's so sweet and slow.
I love how slow it is. I've like since my second birth, like just slowing that part down after having such a bad tear first time round. I've never torn, and it's beautiful.
And then his body kind of got like a little, like he got kind of stuck at his torso. So, and it was just very different than my daughter who just like fell out after the head. And I think what happened with his shoulders, so generally like once the head comes, the next part is like, we want to make sure those shoulders like rotate through properly. So the shoulders came to his spine. I think once he got to the abdomen, I think you thought he was fully out. Yeah. So I was like, Nikki, you gotta give me one more push to fully get the baby out. I just need one more. And so then the rest of it came out. And then I saw like all my might. And I was like, rah! And she's like, another one. And I was like, let me stand up then. And she's like, nope, stay in the water. So he comes out into the world and I still don't even remember the flip, but I guess I like mastered the art of the flip over the like leg over the umbilical cord because I wanted that baby in my arms so badly. And then there was this very intense pause. And again, we only go off of the experiences we've had, and Abby's had a million and I had only had one. And so my daughter came out and she was screaming at the top of her lungs from the second she came out, you know, so I was able to like feel that aliveness. And he came out and it was a completely quiet room. And Abby looks at me and she goes, he's got a minute, hon. Give him a minute. Give him his time.
And you said that because you actually have a countdown. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we've logged the time of birth, right? And Johanna will call out when it's been a minute, but every baby actually gets 1 minute to transition. So at a minute old, we call it APGAR scores. It's essentially scoring a baby based on 5 separate factors. And we're giving them a score from 0 to 2. So we call it out in a minute because there's really no expectation that 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, the baby's fully transitioned. You know, we're talking about something that is essentially getting oxygen through their umbilical cord, but they've never had to breathe before. And the mechanism by which they start breathing is actually once they hit this atmospheric pressure, it's not underwater. It's once they come out of the water. So I knew a midwife who'd been a midwife for like 40, 50 years. Who used to say that baby should actually get 2 minutes when they were born in the water. It's a little too long for my comfort, but every baby gets 1 full minute to transition. And during that time, we're still keeping an eye on them. So when Nikki talks about the eyes going wide, and Sarah, you know, what you mentioned, Johanna and I see that we're like, he opened his eyes. Like, here he is. He's an active participant in like this transition at this point. It's actually, when they keep their eyes closed, it's a little scarier for us, or at least something that we take note of. But he was pinking up. He had great tone. He could open and close his fists. He was keeping his arms close to him. You know, generally we're a little bit more concerned about like floppy, kind of wet and doodly babies. Everything was coming into play. He just hadn't cried yet.
they jump into action, the two of them, in the most incredible way. Like, and I didn't know what was going on really, but I saw both of them were very active. So I knew like something was going on. And I see Johanna, she's like on his feet. And then I see Abby going, Nikki, I want you to just hold his cord. And it's such a sweet, I have that moment too. Actually, a photo of that moment because you saw this fear in my face. And then the second she goes here and she hands me his cord because we're still attached, obviously. And she's like, do you feel the pulsing? And it was such a strong pulse. She's like, that's your baby. Like he's breathing through the cord. You're okay. Okay. And then I'm hearing the countdown. And by the way, he took his first breath at 50. I think it's 49 seconds. So like he pushed it to the very end. And it was a very long minute for me because I'm watching and waiting. And you have this big like climactic moment where you're pushing and roaring. And there's so much noise. I mean, at least in my body, there's so much happening. And then he's out and you're looking at like the silence, right? And I see, and Abby's like, I'm going to just turn it. And she said it in such a gentle way. She's like, I'm actually going to take his body right now and I'm just going to turn him over. And I was like, is he okay though? Does that mean he's okay? She's like, he's okay, but I'm going to turn him over. So he had let out his first big cry and you could tell he was a little, you could hear it like a little gargly, a little bit wet. I was turning him upside down to drain some fluid that's probably just like sitting right here. So in that moment, if you look at the video, like I look back at this video very closely and I'm so grateful that he didn't take a breath until that full minute, because when you're watching and like Abby's rubbing his back a little and Johanna's just checking at his feet for color, I'm assuming it's color.
And then she was rubbing him to try and get him to cry.
Yeah. Okay, get him to cry. And
was she flicking it? Was she flicking the feet?
Yeah, a little toe flick. Yeah, a little toe flick. And then I'm watching it, I'm looking at his face and it's feeling like the longest minute of my life. And as I'm waiting for him to breathe, I didn't see it then, but if you zoom in really close on this video, this kind of like giant blob of mucus actually slides out of his mouth and no one really saw that because he was in front of me. And that's why he didn't take his first breath. He had so much mucus that needed to come out. So I'm holding him and the mucus slides out and I still don't see that happening. And that was kind of the moment where Abby was like, all right, I'm going to flip him down. And so she flips him. And as soon as she flips him over and really gives him some good rubbing and he's upside down, he does start to cry, or not upside down, but like at an angle. He starts to cry. And then she puts him on my legs. She's like, I'm going to close your legs and I'm going to put him here so that he can really feel you. But it was this whole process where it's like, it was like a welcoming into the world and like encouraging, which is so who my son is also, by the way, at this point, now that I know who he is, he's so happy for all hands on deck to be helping him through his transition. But it was so different from my daughter who came in like sort of, roaring, right? And so I didn't have anything to compare it to.
But I think it kind of speaks differently to like home versus hospital in the way that we are like hands-on versus not being hands-on. Generally babies that are born in the hospital, they're pulled on, tugged on a little bit and then like put right on mom's chest. And there's a lot of rubbing and stimulation that automatically happens where, in the home environment, we're trying to ease that transition to the world, make it as non-interventive as possible, while also kind of riding the balance between stepping in, because, it's not nice to not help a baby breathe right away. And also like playing on Nikki's fears, or rather feeling what she was feeling in that moment. I knew that I needed to also I needed to settle her nerves. So where I was really comfortable because his color was great, his tone was great, and his heartbeat was strong, and he was looking around and clearly an active participant in this transition, she needed to feel like he was okay. And so that's when we step in with those gentle methods. It's like, I'm not going to do anything crazy, but I'm going to gently, tip him over to help just kind of release some mucus from his mouth. And then, hey, Mom, why don't you prop up your knees and let's put him in front of you as opposed to on your chest, just to encourage him to cry a little bit more. Because when he's really nice and warm up against your chest, he's going to be more at peace. He also, Nikki wasn't in labor that long. And so, he had it's only been a couple of hours. And those babies sometimes just need a little bit more.
Yeah.
You're exactly. Kind of stunned at how quickly it happened. He's barely, he barely had 9 minutes of pushing into the world. And he just needs a little bit extra. They need a little extra time, a little extra love. But I think, again, it in the hospital, it's all about kind of stepping in and creating a very fearful experience around it.
Yes.
I want my moms to just be like, we helped, we stepped in,
and it was calm and it was okay. And then, the baby was fine after that.
That happened to Forrest as well. My second, I'm listening to this being like, wow, this is bringing me back to Forrest too. And the same thing, like Bodhi came out screaming, my first child. And then my second baby, I like arrived at the birth center and he was out 25 minutes later. Like my very first contraction was 9 a.m. and he was born at 12 or something. And he came out like he was not online, but I was so like joyful. I was like, oh my God, what a birth. Wow. Like I was right in the high of that. But same, my midwife just calmly, we started rubbing, we started doing the things, did the same thing, flipped him over, big like chunks of stuff was coming out of his mouth. And finally he sort of like came into his body. But it's so funny, me looking back on my birth video, I'm just so like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Like I'm not even, I was like, oh, he'll be fine. But yeah, you see the sort of switch where it's like calm, but all right, there's something to do. We're paying attention. But I had the same experience. It's so wild. They just like come out so fast that it's shocking to them almost,
Looking at your video when I was watching it and you were, telling me about the experience, and then I saw that moment that you're talking about, his like arms kind of like went out and his eyes went wide and he did this like amazing thing. And I thought about that line where you said this earlier, like where the baby comes into their body, right? Call your baby in, to their body. And it really looked like a moment in which this like baby was born, and then all of a sudden it was like this, all of a sudden their soul came in and was there, and then it was just like electric, it was like, wow. Okay, I'm in here now, let's get this stuff out of my throat and like let's go. But it was like, wow. Thinking back on it after I left, because watching any birth is like, and because I love birth so much, it like really, sticks with you. And especially because you're like one of my best friends, I'm leaving and I'm thinking about what I saw. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like you captured this unbelievably special moment where the soul came into the body. Like, It was just like, like that to me, or I was like, wow, is that what we saw? Like, and you just don't get to see things like that,
I'm so happy that there's a chance for people listening to know about that minute and that moment, because if who knows, but if I'm lucky enough to, call in a third, baby into this lifetime, I'll have that experience under my belt now and know that that's actually okay. That wasn't a question I ever thought to ask Abby beforehand. Yeah. So I only had to compare it to my daughter, but, now I feel like I could definitely be a little more like Tez in that moment of like, that baby's going to come online when it was.
Oh my God. But if I had known, I would have panicked, I'm sure. But I was just like, I can't believe that this was my birth. That was unbelievable. Like, what did that was wild, I probably wasn't like as in tune at that time. I was like, woo, he's out.
Wow.
And that birth pause too is so very real. I remember thinking about like with my daughter, that moment of I'm not even like able to be present for that first minute or 2 or 3 because you're not even back in your own body yet.
Yes,
totally.
And so with this, I think his like not breathing brought me back really quickly because I was really focused on that for a second. But the birth pause is so very real.
Oh yeah. I mean, you just, again, like, especially when you're, and not to say anything to unmedicated birth or to medicated birth, but I think especially when you're unmedicated and you're feeling every last sensation in your body, it's like on the other side of, what is the most intensity that you've ever felt probably coursing through you. You have to pause. There has to be a moment where, I remember the same actually with my first being like, I didn't cry. Like I didn't get overly emotional. I was like, I had just been through, 24 hours of labor, 3.5 hours of pushing. And so when he was put on my chest, it was just like, there was like an audible sort of sigh, like a letting go of like, oh my God, thank God I'm done. Like that was my first thought. And then eventually it was to like look at him and be like, wow, okay, this is who you are. but it was really just like,
Yes.
"Ooh, okay.
I did it. Oh my God.
Abby, I actually said the entire whoever's looked at my Instagram has heard and seen this, but I actually said exactly those words when my daughter came out. I said, "Oh my God, thank God."
Yes,
I was just
you
like,
did.
that was the line, because I was like, oh, that whole thing just came out of me. I'm done,
Yeah. Oh my God. It's such sweet relief.
There are certain cultures that believe that a mom actually has to receive her baby. And so the midwife or whoever is receiving the baby will actually place the baby on the ground. So like if a woman's in a squatting position or if she's semi-reclined, they'll place the baby on the ground and wait for her to go and receive her baby and put the baby on her. Because there is this strong belief that she needs to be the one who is like fully accepting and receiving that baby. And so until she's ready, the baby's just placed on the floor.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
Oh my gosh.
I bet you look back and go, how long was my baby on the ground?
Yeah, still not ready. I need a little bit of food and
Wow.
I did read once that you don't come back into your body until you hear your baby cry. I read that once. Like that, like somehow like signals or triggers the receiving moment. I don't know if that's true or not. But
I feel like there's this like amazing sort of high shock afterwards where you just feel like, I feel like the thing that keeps running through my head after I give birth every time is like, wow, I can't believe, you just like can't believe that you just did that and that just happened, like the whole, you just keep looking down like, what? Like, this is crazy. And I feel like I said it a million times to my husband. I'm like, he's going to get so tired of hearing me say this. I'm like, can you believe that? Like,
yeah.
Girl, I said those same words. You can't believe it. It's an honest to God miracle every time. And also just unbelievable, like the definition of unbelievable. You're like, I don't know if I can believe that I did that.
Right.
My favorite part of every birth, and it's not because at this point the baby's out, that's not it, but it's watching women really take themselves to like the precipice of like where, they think that they can't possibly take it any further. Like that is that peak challenge. Like, you are taking it requires every bit of strength in you to get past that next contraction and that next point. And then right there on the other side of that baby coming out of you is just like, wow, like, I can't believe they go from like peak exhaustion to and fighting again to just birth this baby.
Elation.
So like, I am done and I love it because I'll attend, I've attended, 30, 56 hour births, like where these women are they're brutally exhausted as they're pushing their baby out into the world. But no matter what, on the other side of that baby coming into the world is this complete elation and energy. Like you just, you're another person on the other side of it.
You really are.
That's why I'm a midwife, because I wanted to do that 1,000 times.
Oh my gosh.
Now I want to be one. I'm like, I'm just going to change
me too. I'm like, what? Oh, maybe that's what we need to do.
Oh no, I was like, let's just do that.
I can tell you a few times I've texted Abby since this and said, like, is there any possibility that I could just attend birth with you? Like, I could be a fly on the wall. I really want to be in that space. I'll take photos. Like, hey, free photos for anyone.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
That's
Hello,
a great
you're a photographer.
We were just hanging out yesterday afternoon and she texted me in the morning. I was like, I can't. I've got a 4th-time client. I've been with her for all of her babies. I was like, I'm racing to her birth right now. She's going to drop a baby
oh my gosh.
Can I just want to come take photos. Okay, I'll do anything for any of these moms. I'll hold a hand. I'll rub a foot. I'll take a photo. I'll put a cold rag. I'll do anything.
That's our dream. That's like the spiritual midwifery book. That's like, that's the dream. It's like, oh, can I just be in one of those little like shacks on the farm and like rub somebody's feet and bring them some fruit while they're
dream.
I definitely see a world where the 3 of us become midwives.
Yeah,
seriously, I'm like thinking about it now. It's like, oh, I know. Cool. We should just buy some land.
That's right.
Like what Anna did.
Would be the doula and the group. Who's the doula? Who's the
Nikki
midwife?
would have the cows. Me, I'll be a doula.
I almost think Tez is the doula actually, because
She is.
she's like, yeah,
I'll
she's
be the
gonna like
doula.
talk you through the whole thing and like, yeah, it's I
Oh
think you're
my
so
gosh.
good. Oh my
Love
gosh.
it.
So
Well, like,
there's also this like moment right after I was thinking about this bond, because honestly, I looked up at Abby, and the first time I actually felt like I wanted to cry was because I looked at Abby to tell her like I did it, like as if she doesn't know, like as if she wasn't just there.
yeah.
Like, look at her and go, I did that. Did
That
you
is-
see that? Like, I did that. You were here with me. And then
That's
that
so
was like the
amazing.
first moment, because I can't really explain it. It's not like, I don't know, it wasn't tears of, I was just looking at her. It was just, I couldn't believe that I did that. And she was there after all the conversations we've had where I said, I'm not sure if I can do this. And she's like,
Yeah.
you can. And I know you can. And then I did. So there's a photo of it. There's a photo of that. Yeah. I'll have to give you girls.
Yeah, we're gonna need that.
Yes, please. Oh
I
my
need to
gosh.
see
So
it.
this was an amazing 2-part episode of
That's right.
Nikki's birth story.
Well, wow, that was unbelievable. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing story. We're going to have you back with Johanna so that we can hear the Vagina Whisperer's like amazing perspective. And Abby, like hearing how you came into this space and just like the care that you give in postpartum, the care that you give during like, you know, the birth experience and then everything before, like it's incredible. And I just feel like so in awe of you, and just like it's amazing. You're an angel. It's amazing that this is what you do and this is the care that you give, and every woman deserves that. And I just hope that like everybody that's listening, you know, if you're feeling off with your care provider and you're thinking, should I, you know, maybe go to somebody else? Like this is a great moment to go, okay, I'm going to just start like doing the research and trying to find somebody that I really feel connected to. So thank you so much for being on here. Both of you, Nikki, for sharing your story so openly and amazingly with all of us. And we love you
and
guys.
Abby, those insights were incredible. So thank you for all of that wisdom. I've locked it all in here and I'll be calling upon it.
Yeah, and I just realized when you both give birth with Abby, I can take the photos.
Perfect.
Yes.
Done.
I love that you ended on that too, with people just like, if you have a thought in your body about not feeling like you're getting the care.
That's right. I think that's so important.
If you don't have someone that you can call, that you can pick up the phone that you know will answer, then maybe it's time to, I don't know. And it doesn't have to be a midwife. It doesn't have to be a home birth. It doesn't honestly have to be any of those things. It could be a doula. It could be, you know, you can see a midwife prenatally and not plan to give birth at home. There's so many routes, so many options available. It could be a good mom support group, one where, you know, you guys philosophically align on things, you know, you can turn to. But definitely, I mean, pregnancy can feel very isolating, and really the isolating when you feel like you can't ask questions or you don't have enough time to ask questions. So find that support.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
So true. Oh.
Well, thank you both for your time. It's so precious, and you gifted us with it. So thank you.
You guys have been listening to part 2 of this amazing birth story with Nikki Reed and Abby Vidikan. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We love you, daisies. Bye.
Bye.